What's happening with gold and other precious metals? Well, in 2025, all precious metals made phenomenal gains, and largest of them and most renowned of them, gold, actually made almost double its return, rising from 2,600 to nearly 5,000 in less than 1 year. And what's more astonishing is the fact that it already was at all-time price high. So let's explore this in more depth and see what would good traders and long-term investors make out of all these factors, and how actually we could make most money out of this phenomenon. First things first, let's see gold futures. Now we are seeing that gold, as I told you just before, rise from approximately 2,600 to nearly 4,500, or in other words, it almost doubled in its price. So in just a couple of years it had phenomenal growth. In 3 years tripled its value. That's not that far from rise of Bitcoin, which was 16,000 and rose to 86,000. Consider this is gold, not some altcoin. And what's interesting is that this phenomenal growth was across precious metals, not only with gold. That's from one side rather obvious, because precious metal historically have close correlation, but if we examine this further, we will see that silver was at its lows also at late 2022 by costing $17, and now it rose to $80. So it was nearly five-fold increase from 16 to 82, and in 2025 rose from 30 to 80, and now it's 70, so almost 2.5 times in 1 year. And actually this is also nothing that unique, because if you look at silver historically, silver have a tendency to have really stable price history, and it usually ends with huge spikes. It happened in 1980, it happened in 2000 I believe 13, and it happens now. So if you are looking closely at historical precious metal markets, this pattern actually isn't that uncommon. And for third in the precious metal, we will explore platinum. So what happened with platinum? It cost 940 in late 2024, early 2025, and it spiked just recently to 2,000, 2,500. So similar as with silver, it also rose 2.5 times in matter of months. Pretty phenomenal, but in historical terms this growth wasn't as great as it was with gold and silver, because it fluctuated that 800 and 900 level for several years. So gold had consistent and longer several year growth opposed to platinum, and silver just simply exploded in the last couple of months. For a little, I would say, contrast, we might see copper futures and how copper futures have developed since early 2020s. And here we see copper costed 3.4 and it rose to 5.8. It also was at all-time high, but that rise was not nearly as dramatic as it was with gold, silver and platinum. Here in 2025 we are having price breakouts that were higher than in 2022 and 2011. So all-time high for this industrial metal as well. But what's the reasons? Well, here's the thing. With exception of copper, which is some sort of indicator of global economic growth and global economic boom, because it's mostly industrial metal, I haven't made much attention to fundamentals of precious metals, because I believe that's rather useless endeavor. The reason for that is simple, because here demand is mostly driven of investors' perception of risks and stability. In other words, if people perceive that there will be some huge geopolitical instabilities or price uncertainties, they will flock to gold, and this factor is impossible to verify or somehow quantifiably measure. But before we are dwelling into specific trades or investments, I will show you just how useless the news reading and fundamental analysis for these metals are by looking at major news sites for precious metals. For instance, now we are at Kitco, which is largest gold site. So here you could actually read any kind of news you want, and you actually wouldn't have any reasonable assumptions about anything, because if we go to archives and see what they were saying a year before, you probably wouldn't have any reasonable guesses whatsoever about this phenomenal growth this year. Gold remains our single favorable long commodity. Spot price to reach something. This is sort of news you are seeing if you try to do fundamental analysis on gold in prices like Kitco. If you are going to CNBC, you are looking at similar pattern. We are at CNBC metals section and we are seeing just news about all-time high silver prices and what are some pundits saying, but I will give you one hint. This wouldn't give you 1% of advantage regards your long-term asset allocation in precious metals. And if you are going into something like goldprice.com, which is a similar site, you probably would see slightly more elaborate price analysis depending on what you want to see. You see UK gold dealers, United States gold dealers, and things which matters if you have physical gold, but it wouldn't help you a thing in terms of gold fundamental and technical analysis. So what I'm always saying that if you are looking at gold, you have only two options. One option is to allocate part of your capital to gold and forget about anything else and simply use dollar cost average as you would do with S&P 500 or government bonds. So put aside 10% of your investments in gold and just forget about everything else, or simply follow long-term trends in precious metals. Let me give you an example. For instance, if you were using long-term trend following methods, you probably would have some average gains from 2020 to 2022. This is a time when you had huge jackpot in crypto markets, particularly up to early 2022. But then after late 2022, you probably could have made simply one trade by following long-term trades from gold to around 1.6 to 1.7 thousand to current prices, and that's it. You could simply follow the trend by Bollinger Bands, moving averages, whatever moving average technique you would use. You simply follow this trend and looked how your capital made multiples of returns. You wouldn't be talking about 1 or 5% returns. You are talking about making several times your initial capital in this one trade. And this is how you simply watched it. You simply follow the trend and forget about everything else, and this will be your best strategy in markets such as gold. So that's my take. I don't actually know whether this phenomenal return will continue in next year. Maybe it will, maybe it does. If it will, those who are holding gold and are making long-term trend following strategies are making killing. Those who try to think what will happen in the next 2 or 3 months, they will be burning their time, their energy and their money, because that's a very difficult way how to make money. And question is why we should have difficult ways how to make money if we will have smooth ways how to make money. Simple question, but I don't know why people have chosen very difficult answers to this question. But nevertheless, that's the thing. You have two options. Whether you are dollar cost averaging and investing in gold ETFs, or using trend following strategy and following major trends of gold, platinum, palladium, whatever, and fortune is yours. And if you want to know how to make this more effectively and more professionally, then visit my link below the video, learn how to invest and learn how to trade, and join me together in this trading journey. And if you are interested in content like this, make sure you are subscribing to me and watching my next videos. So thanks for watching, till next video.